Hello, how you doing? And welcome back to the channel. Wales against England in the Six Nations this weekend is on. After much uncertainty this week, would the Welsh players go on strike or not? It has been confirmed in the last half an hour or so this evening on Wednesday that the game is going ahead, which is great news. The team news will be released tomorrow for both camps. Wales had delayed naming their team on Tuesday, so tomorrow I'll kind of have a full match preview. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we understand has happened today, some of the interesting things to come out of that, in particular, what it could mean for where Welsh players play going forward, because a big sticking point has been that 60 cap rule. In the negotiations, that has been reduced to 25 caps. So I'm going to go through some of the players now that previously wouldn't have been able to move abroad, but now, all of a sudden, they might have the option to move abroad. I think that's really a fascinating part of this. All right, if you are new to the channel, do subscribe, like the video, and also drop a comment down below. What do you make of this whole situation? Are you pleased with the overall outcome? Let's get into it. So I will get on to the 60 cap rule coming down to 25 and a little bit on the game in a short while. I just wanted to run through from what I've seen reported from a lot of the journalists that have been across it today and the various news outlets, kind of a rough idea of what's happened today, because we heard about these crunch talks but didn't necessarily know exactly what that looked like. So there was a meeting of the Professional Rugby Board, the PRB, this morning, and that was members of the Welsh Rugby Union as well as officials from the 4 regions. So they had a meeting this morning. Then this afternoon, the PRB plus the WRU's acting chief executive, Nigel Walker, met with the regional bosses and like over 100 players in the Welsh professional game, essentially. That meeting happened this afternoon. There was also a Zoom board meeting for the WRU, and also Nigel Walker, the acting chief exec, then had a meeting with Ken Owen. So we don't know the specifics of all those meetings, but that just kind of gives you an idea of what a busy day it's been in terms of rugby, in terms of professional rugby in Wales, the different meetings that have been happening, the different parties involved, having discussions and things like that. And we have got to the point now. The big threat from the players was that they would strike for that England-Wales game, Wales-England game, I should say, but that is going ahead. The 3 main issues, really, from the players' perspective, was they wanted representation from the Welsh Professional Players Association at PRB meetings. It's understood, that got reported earlier this week, that that was something they had already agreed upon. So that is going to happen. As I said earlier, the 60 cap rule, they wanted that abolished. As I understand it, it's going to be down to 25 caps now. And the final point was the players and agents, or another big sticking point was the removal of that kind of fixed term contract where 80% of the money was guaranteed and the other 20% was based upon bonuses. The players and agents, from what I've seen, I think I saw it in the BBC Sport article about this, that the players and agents would have an option between a fixed or a variable contract. So that's the kind of the concession that has been made there. But for me, as I said at the top of the video, the most interesting part of this is that 60 cap rule coming down. I personally think that they should have scrapped it, but they've agreed on 25 caps. And Russ Petty, for those of you on Twitter, Russ Petty's a great follow anyway, but he put a really interesting graphic up about this, where it basically runs through the Welsh players at those 4 regions and playing abroad, some of them as well, basically outlining who has what caps and therefore who we could see potentially leaving the union and leaving playing domestic rugby in Wales. So there's 12 players at the regions already with 60 caps or more, and 1 in France. So that's kind of the less interesting part of it. Those are guys that could have left, have decided to stay already because they've got more than 60 caps. Although you look at some of the players, maybe the likes of Thomas Francis or Dan Lydia or Bradley Davies, I don't know, guys that are still in the 60s, maybe they might look to move at their next contract, who knows. But the really fascinating part is 22 players at the regions who have 25 to 59 caps. And there's also 3 in Japan and 1 in England, because those are the players that all of a sudden would have had to have looked at playing their domestic rugby in Wales, now are going to have an opportunity to go abroad. And he also then outlines the players that have less than 25 caps in there as well. So I would encourage you having a look at that graphic, because I'm not going to go through every single name in that list. I will just flag though Will Rowlands, who obviously is moving abroad. He's currently on 23 caps and he's out with quite a long-term injury. He's not going to feature in this Six Nations. I just wonder whether Will Rowlands will be back in time to earn a couple of caps in maybe World Cup warm-up matches so that he can therefore be selected once he has made that move to Racing 92. He was a name that immediately stuck out to me. But if we want to run through the players who have between 25 and 59 caps, so the players that can now move abroad. For the Ospreys, you've got Gareth Anscombe, Owen Watkins, Scott Baldwin, Rhys Webb, Nicky Smith, Adam Beard and Alex Cuthbert. At Cardiff, Lloyd Williams, Josh Navidi, Thomas Williams, Josh Adams, Dylan Lewis and Reece Priestland. At the Scarlets, Aaron Shingler, Ryan Elias, Samson Lee, Wyn Jones and Scott Williams. At the Dragons, it's Ross Moriarty, Elliot Dee, Rob Evans and Aaron Wainwright. And then the ones already playing abroad who could come back into the fold, Nick Tompkins, who's been selected quite a lot recently anyway, because his contract hasn't come to an end since he made his Wales debut. You then got Hadley Parkes, Corey Hill and Jake Bull. So those are the guys who are currently at the regions that maybe we're going to see them move away now, which could be really, really interesting. So there's a lot of big name players in there. They might search for a more lucrative contract abroad, I would imagine, quite possibly. But also, importantly, Jake Bull and Corey Hill, who have been playing over in Japan, they come back into the fold. And that is going to interest Warren Gatland, because those are two guys that I think will come straight back in, who immediately add a bit of bulk to that forward pack. Both of them early 30s, so they're not necessarily young guys that are going to be there for a long, long time more. But I think if you want to add experience back into that squad, guys who have been there and done it, that's some really interesting selections for Warren Gatland. I've mentioned the players there. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think you're going to see an exodus of those players moving abroad now that they have the option to? What's it going to mean for the Welsh game domestically? Personally, I'm glad to see them reach a compromise. I did wonder whether they would get rid of the 60 cap rule at all. I suppose what it does mean is it means the likes of Jack Morgan, possibly Gareth Thomas, depending on how many more caps that he's able to get. There are a lot of players in there that will have to stay with the regions. There's a lot of players in there that will be able to leave the regions as well. And I think what it does for that domestic game and for the players that move abroad is going to be really, really fascinating. I think I'm going to leave it there. As I have already said in the video, I'm going to do a full preview of the actual Wales-England game tomorrow once we have both sets of teams, because I think that is, all of a sudden, we can focus back on that again. One thing I would mention, though, is how distracted have the Wales players been? This has been a huge story this week. They delayed naming their team. They also cancelled what would have been a really heavy training session on Tuesday afternoon. How prepared are Wales going to be? What sort of impact is this going to have? Or potentially, what sort of galvanising effect is it going to be? Because I think they will get a boost from their home support after what's happened this week. In the sense the crowd are going to be so behind those players. I just wonder whether it could bring that kind of siege mentality for the players. What impact is it going to have? I'll go into that in more detail in the video tomorrow. But Wales against England in the Six Nations is on. They have reached an agreement. It could have long-lasting consequences for the game domestically in Wales. We shall wait and see. As I've said already, subscribe to the channel and like the video and drop a comment down below. What do you make of everything? See you in the next one.